What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So it is prediction time. It is fight week. Suga Sean O'Malley took the UFC by storm on the Contender Series 6 years ago, if you can believe it. He is now going to be stepping in this Saturday night for his first ever world title fight. He has a monumental mountain to climb. Aljamain Sterling is arguably the best bantamweight of all time. I certainly think he's top three at minimum. Yeah. He's good everywhere, but especially tenacious with his grappling. We saw him take Henry Cejudo down 4 times in the fight. This is a tough matchup for him, but in your opinion, is this a winnable fight for Suga Sean?
I really do love this fight for Suga Sean, and I know Aljamain Sterling is being called the bantamweight GOAT these days, and it's hard to disagree with that, and that almost felt like it came out of nowhere, right? Everybody always talks about Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw, and you've got these guys, Renan Barao, all these guys that were really, really good for a really long time and just sort of held those top spots. But then out of nowhere, Aljamain Sterling just comes, and now he's like breaking all their records, and he's doing more impressive things than all of them were doing. And you kind of have to just say that at this point he's undeniable. And if he can beat Suga Sean, who just a couple of years ago nobody really thought was that guy, if he's able to beat him, I think that Aljamain Sterling will leave the division as the bantamweight GOAT. And I know he wants to go to 45 and see how he can do up there. I believe he'll be successful up there as well. But he can't look past Suga Sean, and that's the one thing I think that Aljamain Sterling has been doing this camp, is kind of overlooking Suga. And everybody knows this is a striker versus grappler match, and Suga's got some really clean striking, but if you can get him on his back, he's probably going to have a tough night out. And if Aljamain Sterling isn't able to get the fight where he wants it, he'll probably have a tough night out there. But you saw him take down Henry Cejudo. You saw him go in there and basically ragdoll every single fighter that he's ever been in there with, and he can get the fight where he wants it. That's the one thing about a tenacious wrestler, is they might not have, all the best skills on the feet, or they might not have all the best submission skills, but a wrestler can take the fight where they want it. And if Aljamain Sterling wants to be on your back like a human backpack, he can be there. If he wants to be on top of you, ground and pounding you, and if he wants to start submitting you, he can do that too. So Suga's got a lot to look out for. This is a very dangerous fight, but if you go in there to become a UFC world champion, you don't expect to get the belt in an easy fashion. So I think that Suga Sean actually has the advantage in the mindset that he's taking into this fight, and I think Aljamain Sterling could take a page from him, because while Aljamain is the better fighter in my opinion, and I think Aljamain is the champ for a reason, I also think that Suga Sean isn't taking this lightly, and I think that Aljamain Sterling might be.
Yeah, very valid points, but I think I'm going to pick Aljamain Sterling to win this one, and I think he's going to win it by submission. We talk about his wrestling pedigree and how good and tenacious he is as a wrestler, right? And it's no secret. I talk about it all the time. I believe that a good wrestling pedigree is quite arguably the best skill you could take with you when you're beginning your MMA journey. I think if you look at the litany of champions in the UFC, it's pretty reflective of that. But what Aljamain has done to even increase that ability is he's got these lethal submission skills. He's working with some great coaching. One thing I love about Aljo, he's been with the same team his entire career. He's a loyal guy. He's in there wrestling and grappling with Merab Dvalishvili every day, who's an absolute monster. So you have this uber tenacious grappling and wrestling mixed with these incredible back takes and just absolutely devastating submissions. So I think this fight's going the same way that the Corey Sandhagen fight went. Corey is also another tall, dynamic striker who's very good. Aljamain was able to get to his back and choke him out. I think he's going to be able to do the same thing with Sean. Now, I don't think it'll happen as quickly as it happened against Corey Sandhagen. I think Sean is going to be well prepared as far as his takedown defense, and he's very powerful. So Aljamain's going to have to kind of look out for those power strikes on his entry, which is why I think Aljo will kind of take the first round. I think he might even concede the first round to Sean just to get those reads to try to time his takedown. But once he's able to get it, I think it's going to be rinse and repeat. He's going to do some damage in the second and third round with the ground and pound. And then I think towards the end of the fight, the second half of the fight, he'll be able to secure that submission after he wears Sean down a little bit. And the reason that's my prediction is I just keep coming back to the same thing. He took Henry Cejudo down 4 times in their fight. They literally went takedown for takedown in that fight, and that's so impressive because Henry Cejudo is a gold medalist Olympic wrestler. At one point in time, he was the best wrestler in the entire world in his weight class, and then he gets taken down by Aljamain Sterling multiple times in the fight. So no matter how much Sean's working on that takedown defense or how good he is at keeping range, you got to think the guy that can take down the gold medalist is eventually going to find a shot against the guy who's got nowhere near the wrestling pedigree. So for that reason, I'm calling Aljo by submission, and I think it's going to happen in the second half of the fight.
Yeah, you're not going to get much of an argument out of me when you talk about that. Obviously, if you can take Henry Cejudo down, you can take Suga Sean down. But I have to point out that Henry Cejudo had a more willingness to wrestle with Aljamain, and that's something that Suga Sean knows he is completely outmatched in. And I think that Suga Sean is going to control the distance of this fight as long as he possibly can. And Suga has a very hard task ahead of him. He has to keep the distance from Aljamain Sterling, all the while not get his back up against the fence, which is something that he's done historically. He can usually pick somebody apart and kind of use the outer frame of the octagon to keep himself safe. But as you know, these days, everybody that's heavy in the wrestling realm will use the cage to their advantage to start to bring somebody down. So Suga Sean has to look to keep the distance, but also stand his ground in the center of the octagon. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, but he's one of the most dynamic strikers the sport's ever seen. I think he's really creative in the way he's able to make angles and find good striking opportunities. And I think it is crucial that he cracks Aljamain Sterling early in this fight so the takedowns become a little bit more telegraphed and he can start to see when Aljamain starts diving for the legs and starts making it more apparent that he wants this fight on the ground. Suga Sean is lethal on the feet, but the same thing can be said for Aljamain on the ground.
Super solid points. But what is your final prediction for this fight?
Well, I'm glad you asked. And I've gone back and forth on this fight. And of course, you know, my brain at first was like, of course, go Aljamain Sterling. He's done it to everybody. He's going to do it to Suga as well. But I just think there's something undeniable and special about Suga Sean O'Malley. And I might be crazy for predicting him, but I do think he's going to get his hand raised in this fight. I think he's going to go out there. He's going to crack Aljamain Sterling early. And I think he's going to look for a late TKO finish once he has Aljamain kind of, you know, diving at his legs and looking for desperate takedown attempts. Suga Sean's very lethal and very unorthodox, and what you don't see coming is usually the most lethal shot.
Wow, bold prediction. We will see.
Let's go.